Lead generation agencies, email marketing insights. Cold email is harder now, but the upside is still massive. If your cold email program feels less predictable than it did a couple of years ago, you're not imagining it. Buyers are flooded, inbox filtering is stricter, and template outreach gets ignored fast. At the same time, email remains one of the highest ROI levers in B2B when the fundamentals are right, with estimates around $38 returned for every $1 spent. The gap between email doesn't work and email prints meetings is almost always execution. This is where lead generation agencies earn their keep. A strong B2B sales agency or cold email agency isn't winning because it has a clever subject line. It's winning because it runs disciplined experiments across many segments, keeps deliverability clean, and treats targeting like a revenue function. In our experience at SalesHive, the biggest breakthroughs come from doing fewer things better. Fewer segments, fewer offers, fewer words, and more relevance. In this guide, we'll break down what modern outbound benchmarks look like, what top teams do differently, and how to decide whether to keep email in-house or lean on sales outsourcing. You'll also see how to diagnose low reply rates without guessing and how to build a system where email supports, not competes with, your SDR motion, cold calling services, and LinkedIn outreach services. Use 2025 benchmarks to stop arguing with opinions. Before you rewrite copy or blame your SDRs, benchmark reality. Across 2025 datasets, average cold email reply rate sits around 5.8%, and broader B2B cold email benchmarks show about 27.7% opens, 5.1% replies, and roughly 1% meetings booked. If you're consistently below those levels over a 90-day window, something structural is off. Usually list quality, deliverability, or offer clarity. It's also true that the inbox is getting tougher. One study cites a 15% year-over-year decline in reply rates, which is exactly why spray and pray breaks down faster than it used to. The upside is that top performers are still separating. Top-tier campaigns routinely hit 8 to 12% response rates, which means improvement is available if you build the right system. A quick way to align your team or your outsourced sales team is to define what good looks like by stage. Why agencies obsess over ICP and list building services. Most teams treat targeting like a setup step. The best SDR agencies treat it like the product. When we see outbound underperform, it's rarely because the copy is bad, it's because the list is vague, stale, or built from the wrong assumptions about who buys. One of the most common mistakes is widening the ICP to get more volume, which usually lowers relevance and makes deliverability worse at the same time. A practical rule: spend the majority of your effort on the list. Strong lead generation agencies often put 70 to 80% of the work into ICP definition, segmentation, data quality checks, and trigger selection before they write a single email. That's how you earn the right to send fewer emails and get more replies, because the message is landing in the right problem space. If you want a fast, high-confidence improvement, tighten your non-negotiables: industry, size, geography, tech stack, and buying committee titles, rebuild the list from scratch, and cut fringe accounts that haven't converted historically. Whether you do it internally or through B2B list building services, your goal is simple. Every prospect should be plausibly in market for the same offer at roughly the same maturity level. Deliverability is a revenue problem, not an IT checkbox. Cold email performance doesn't start in your copy doc. It starts in your sending infrastructure. If your domains aren't authenticated, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, if you're sending too much volume per inbox, or if your bounce rate is creeping up, you'll pay for it in invisibility. This is where many internal teams struggle, and where an outbound sales agency often has a repeatable setup playbook. The second common mistake is measuring opens as the primary KPI, especially in a post-privacy world. Open rates can be inflated or suppressed by mailbox behavior, so you should treat replies and meetings as the real scoreboard, and use opens mainly as a directional signal when diagnosing deliverability. If your open rate is far below the 27.7% benchmark while your targeting is tight, that's usually a deliverability flag. From an implementation standpoint, keep your sequence disciplined. A single clear offer, short emails, typically 150 to 200 words max, and consistent sending patterns that don't spike. Most teams also underuse follow-up. In practice, the first email is just permission to run the sequence. When deliverability and consistency are handled correctly, your SDR agency motion becomes easier to manage because results stop swinging wildly week to week. Cold email doesn't fail because prospects hate email. It fails because most teams send the wrong message to the wrong list from a domain the inbox doesn't trust. Relevance beats personalization theater every time. Personalization only works when it deepens relevance. The worst version is a generic pitch with a shallow first line. Prospects see through it, and it can even reduce trust. Instead, segment by use case, pain, and trigger, so your core message fits without gymnastics. Then use personalization to prove you did real homework, not to fake familiarity. This is why segmentation is the fastest lever in outbound. Segmented campaigns have been associated with as much as a 760% revenue lift versus non-segmented blasts, which is exactly what we see when teams move from one list, one sequence, to a few tight ICP slices with distinct angles. The best cold email agency programs don't sound smart. They sound specific because they're built for one clear buyer situation. A strong operating habit is to redesign your sequence around one offer and repeat it consistently while changing the proof. Each touch should reinforce the same CTA, for example, a 20-minute assessment, but add a new insight, a short case result, a relevant assumption, a risk reducer, or a simple question that qualifies intent. This is also where pairing email with B2B cold calling services can help. Email creates familiarity, and calls convert interest into a meeting faster when timing is right. When reply rates are low, diagnose the right layer. If you're stuck below the 5.8% average reply rate, treat it like a systems problem, not a copy problem. The quickest path is to isolate variables. First, deliverability, then list fit, then offer, then copy. Teams often do this backwards, endlessly rewriting messaging while their data quality and sending reputation quietly sabotage every test. Another common mistake is optimizing for activity instead of outcomes. If your team is using pay-per-appointment lead generation logic implicitly, just book something, without defining qualification, you'll create friction between SDRs and AEs and burn your TAM with low-quality meetings. Whether you hire SDRs internally or use a sales development agency, document what a qualified meeting is and review a small sample of calls every month to tighten targeting and messaging together. Use the table below to troubleshoot with clarity. It's not perfect, but it prevents the most expensive error in outbound, fixing the wrong thing for 60 days. Optimization. Combine AI, testing, and a true multi-channel cadence. Multi-channel isn't a buzzword, it's how buyers behave. Email creates a low-friction entry point. LinkedIn adds credibility, and a disciplined cold-calling team turns interest into calendar time. If you're evaluating cold-calling companies or a cold-calling agency, look for tight coordination. The call should reference the same offer and timing as the email, not run as a disconnected script. AI is also a real force multiplier when it's applied to research, personalization scaffolding, and experimentation, without replacing judgment. Teams report roughly a 29% productivity boost from using AI in cold outreach workflows, which matters because it lets you keep quality high without inflating headcount. At SalesHive, we use AI-driven personalization to make messages feel one-to-one while keeping the strategy consistent, which is how you scale without drifting into random acts of outbound. Operationally, optimization should look boring. A/B test one variable at a time. Keep measurement windows long enough to be meaningful, and avoid changing targeting and copy in the same week. The goal is a repeatable machine your outsourced B2B sales or internal team can run, not a sequence that only works when one person babysits it. When you get this right, you send fewer emails, protect your domain reputation, and still climb toward that 8 to 12% top-tier response band. Deciding between in-house and a lead generation agency partner. Keeping email in-house can work if you have three things. 1. Someone who owns deliverability and data quality. 2. A tight feedback loop between SDRs and AEs. And 3. Enough volume to learn quickly without damaging your domain. If those pieces are missing, partnering with a specialized SDR agency or outbound sales agency is often the most efficient shortcut to predictable pipeline, especially when your current baseline is under 3% replies and below 1% meetings. If you pilot an agency, avoid outsourcing everything on day one. Pick one ICP segment, give the partner clear qualification criteria, and compare their results directly against your in-house motion over the same time window. This is also where procurement questions matter. Contract flexibility, transparency into activity, and how they handle list-building services and inbox health. If you're researching SalesHive reviews or SalesHive pricing, the right lens is whether the partner can show you a clean line from targeting decisions to booked meetings and pipeline creation. The next step is simple. Pull 90 days of performance data, stack it against the benchmarks, and choose one improvement path to run for the next 30 days. ICP tightening, deliverability hardening, offer redesign, or multi-channel sequencing with B2B cold calling. Email still earns its place in B2B growth because the ROI is real. But the winners in 2025 are the teams and sales agencies that treat outbound like an engineering discipline, not a volume game.